Alrighty, welcome to my final project here, leadership experience. Getting egos to coexist. I thought that was quite a fitting title for my task this semester. And as we've talked about with this team, there are quite many egos that exist. So let's just get into it. Oh, there we are. So, what was I leading? I was leading 21 different egos. And then I'm not going to be naive. I also have an ego on the baseball field. So, leading 21 different egos and having three other egos lead with me, and then having to keep mine in check. And then boys and men that believe they had something to prove. There were mature guys on the team. There were immature guys on the team. And I'll get into kind of how those immaturities and maturities played out in the team dynamic and what ultimately happened throughout the season with those egos and people. So what was my task and how were we going to complete it? So I set the goal for myself for leading to achieve 100% team chemistry. And then how are we going to get there? We set a goal at the start of the season to get to regionals. We ended up getting to regionals this year, so that was great. Accomplished that goal. And instilling a sense of family, since for a lot of these guys, the baseball team is their fraternity or brotherhood. But there are also guys part of fraternities, so they kind of have their own brotherhood, but we wanted to create that sense of family so that for those guys that didn't have a family, they had one playing baseball with us. So jumping in right into it, leadership PLOs that I think we covered pretty well throughout the semester. And each of these PLOs had their, I guess, struggles, you could say, of just kind of being brought out and having to balance things along with them. So the first one, I think diversity was a huge one. We had different egos. Like I was saying, guys, I think they had to prove something. A lot of I guys on the team instead of team guys. Probably the most diverse age group we've had for a baseball team. A lot of young guys this year. In this picture alone, there's all different years there. So freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors, all different guys. Fraternity kids, obviously, egos play a huge factor with those guys. So that is something that we came across and had to deal with. And different backgrounds. I use backgrounds because kind of depending on where you're from, you're kind of brought up with certain standards or less standards than other. So we had SoCal, NorCal, one guy's from Alaska, and then a lot of people from the Pacific Northwest. From what I've seen from the SoCal people and the Pacific Northwest people, like not a total bunch of accountability there. And accountability is kind of one of the big things we try to instill this season. Keeping each other in check, make us stronger. The kid we have from Alaska, very hardworking, very positive guy. He came up from salmon fishing all his life. So he's had to go through quite a bit of struggles, and you can see his leadership come along on the team. He's one of the guys that help lead this task we set for ourselves this season. But yeah, I think diversity was huge in balancing all the other PLOs, and as far as how our season was led by our leaders. Emotional intelligence, definitely a huge thing. Definitely a big thing for me in the leadership program the entire time. Uh, Ever since Brian Thompson first brought up the idea in 325, it stuck with me ever since, and has been one of my core values of in leadership, of striving for excellence in that. So emotional intelligence amongst officers. Um, I was able to, obviously, these guys I'm leading with have no idea what emotional intelligence means. Um, they're just more focused on the goal, but throughout the whole, like, I put this message in them that I'm doing this leadership experience project and I'd like to help them lead, and here are some things like I want you guys to look out for while we're doing this together. Can't entirely say that they did that, but I know I was doing it the whole time. So when it comes to officers, um, emotional intelligence, I think was huge at practice, because not a lot of guys are looking at body language or attitude or what's going on. So one of the big things I had seen at practice was negative body language. And I can say that for amongst players and amongst officers. Um, and that obviously body language is a huge factor in sports. You show negative body language, the opposing team's going to take advantage of that, but that body language is also going to spread to the rest of our own team. And we definitely saw that a few times during the season. But coming into practice with negative body language or a crappy look on your face just doesn't set a great tone for that practice. And so we saw that a couple of times in uh, in the season, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Uh, Emotional intelligence, when it comes to um, the players, between the players and the other players on the team, not a huge thing, or not a huge, I guess, stress on emotional intelligence was seen there. Um, Again, like, these guys don't quite understand that yet, but not so. I think picking each other up was a huge thing, as far as like someone striking out or someone making an error on the field. That emotional intelligence was there to go up to that guy and be like, "Hey, chin up, like, wash it. Let's keep moving forward." Um, Between players and officers, I would say me and the other officer that's in my class, or my age, is a kid from Alaska. I think his emotional intelligence is super strong. Um, he's always hearing players out, getting feedback from them. I'm also doing the same thing constantly because I value the other players' opinions. There's, I view them as much of a voice as I am on the team. And I think that's big when you're trying to create a sense of community and a sense of family. For the other two officers, the vice president doesn't really talk much. But our president, as I've talked with you before, his emotional intelligence is not that high. It's more, it's my way or the highway. And I'll also get into how negative his emotional intelligence was as well. Um, but this was definitely a big one for us as far as keeping us all glued together, for sure. Um, Officer v. officer. At the start of the season, I think we were all on the same page, keeping each other in check. Um, making sure we were all heard and whatnot. And then the middle of the season, that started to deteriorate. Um, I'll get into that a little bit later as well. And then at the end of the season, we picked it up and got back to it. And I think collectively as officers, our emotional intelligence was way higher at the beginning or at the end of the season than it was at the start of the season, which is great because that's what we needed, that final push to get to our final goal of 100% team chemistry and our goal of making it to playoffs. Communication, obviously a huge thing, especially in sports and especially when you're trying to get 100% team chemistry. Communication on and off the field was huge. On the field, obviously, we always got to be talking. We started to, in the middle of the season, we started to start listening to our players after I suggested we do that. Start listening to our players mid-game, seeing what they think we should do as far as game situations and whatnot. And I think that really helped build a sense of trust amongst the guys, that their opinions do matter and we do take them in consideration and often put their opinion into play. Off the field had to do with more like communicating, whether you're coming to practice, you're going to be there at the game, someone needs rides or whatnot, or just voicing any concerns off the field that has to do with what happened last game or what we should do at practice and whatnot. And we promoted an open environment. It did get a little bit fuzzy there towards the middle of the season and at the beginning of the season, just because, again, our president wasn't so welcoming, or I think welcoming is a good welcoming with their opinions. And again, we'll get into that later, but I don't want to spoil all the good stuff now. And then there was a good amount of miscommunication. So basically at the start of the season or before the season started, us officers said we were going to coach and make decisions and do all the behind the scenes work collectively as a group. That was what was communicated at the start of the season. Beginning of the season, that all of a sudden did not happen. And that started to unravel and brought us to our breaking point in the middle of the season, which I'll talk about. But this was definitely a very big PLO that we had throughout the season that put us down, but ultimately brought us back out of the hole. And then for the fifth and final PLO, you got the scholarship of leadership. I believe that these three leaderships here were the ones that we experienced throughout this season. So adaptive leadership, having to adapt to those egos for each different player because they were all each very different. No one was exactly the same. You had your timid guys, you had your big loudmouth guys, and then you had your guys who thought they knew exactly what we should do, when we should do it, and how we should do it. So adapting to that was definitely huge. I had to, for sure, like talk with the officers and be like, hey, we can't talk to these guys the exact same way we talk to everyone. Everyone's going to take it personally. And the minute we say something wrong to one guy, it could lead him to quitting the team. And we don't want to do that at all, for sure. So adaptive leadership was huge. Authentic leadership, when you're trying to get 100% team chemistry, I can't think of anything better than being authentic. Um, being our true selves, being our open, being honest with the guys was how we were going to get there. It's how we were going to win. Um, and I thought we did pretty well with being our authentic selves. Um, I think there were a couple moments throughout the season where we may not have stuck to our team values. But at the end of the day, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has those days. But authentic leadership, I thought was carried out pretty well throughout the season. Team leadership, obviously, it was team leadership. There's four of us leading, and then in the middle of the season, we had um, a coach join our team, just to kind of be that guy where, oh, he's making the lineups. The players aren't making the lineups. We're not making the lineups because we're also players as well as leaders on the team. And so we wanted to kind of create a sense of it's not our decision. We talk about it, but at the end of the day, it's not our decision. It's going to be the coach's decision. So we thought that was a good ad to kind of mediate that kind of stuff. But then again, team leadership has its positives. It's based on performance and development. We performed well this season. We made it to playoffs. Haven't done that since 2016. So I think that says a lot. And development, we saw guys get better throughout the whole season. Couple pitchers and myself started the season off rocky with our pitching, and throughout the season we just developed, got better, and started just lights out pitching. So that was really good to see. Bats started coming alive, getting better. So I think from a performance and development standpoint, we carried out team leadership pretty well. The communication piece of team leadership between the four of us probably not carried out to its maximum potential. But that's just something that we had to deal with at the end of the day. So problem solving, here we are. Probably the single-handedly the biggest PLO that we had the entire season, all season long. I mean, all season long. So going back, problem solving with each PLO, like I said, diversity, we had a problem solve there, with all the different egos, and then it goes into communication of how we had to talk to each of those guys. Scholarship of leadership, adaptive leadership, always adapting, always problem solving in those three: team leadership, authentic, and adaptive, always kind of changing the way we're going about things, which each of those, just problems throughout the season. But we solved them at the end of the day, and that was the hugest thing. So we had two dilemmas that I think were some of the turning points. Three dilemmas, but two of them had to do with freshmen. That were some of the biggest turning points in our season. I'll start with the freshman one, and we'll just go in chronological order. So first one was kind of our star freshman, absolute just stud on the field. But he's got an ego, feels like he has something to prove. Basically, he was constantly showing up late to practice, kind of just not seeming like he cared to be there. He's also a fraternity guy. So there was that was also in the back of his head. But constantly showing up late to practice, just not looking like he's being there, kind of sandbagging his reps. So after one of the games, our president thought it was a great idea to talk to him right after the game, in front of the team, off to the side, but the team was still in the dugout. And this conversation started out pretty hot. It was all four of us officers, and our president just kind of started going at him and was like, "We just feel like you don't want to be here, and you don't really give a shit about our team. And honestly, if you don't want to be here, just leave." And started bringing some examples and whatnot, and I was just like, "This is not how we should be talking to this kid right now. He is going to quit if you keep talking to him like this." Um, and we know this kid loves the game of baseball, and we know he wants to be there, but he doesn't act like it. So I had to kind of put the conversation on pause and be like, "Hey, like we can't keep going through the season with you coming late to practice just because people see you as a leader on the team. Even though you are a freshman, a lot of the guys look up to you and want to see you succeed, and they want to see you help us succeed. We just want you to show a little bit more effort moving forward. Showing up to practice on time is just a great first step and a huge thing that guys are going to start noticing, because they notice that you're late all the time." Blah, blah, blah. That conversation kept going on kind of like that. It wasn't very long. Um, and then the player was like, after I got done with my spiel, he was like, "See, this is why I can talk to you, but I can't talk to you," and pointed at our president. So that's when I realized it, but that's when we started to realize collectively as a group that our president may not be having the most positive attitude. Um, and then this made me start to kind of question, reflect, and think on, why is that? Why is our president acting like this? And then this brings us to the officer dilemma. This one was really hard for me to swallow, just because the president was like one of my really good friends freshman year. Kind of took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, and I loved playing baseball with him. This year, I didn't want to play baseball at all. I was getting ready to quit in the middle of this semester. And so I was probably gonna have to find a new project. But I didn't not quit because I needed to find a new project if I did. Just putting that out there. But yeah, I was getting ready to quit and stop playing baseball because of this guy. He wasn't making baseball fun anymore. And so I didn't want to confront him with anything yet, because I didn't have anything to confront him with. And then one of the seniors came up to me. He goes, "Hey, I think you might want to look at this text message I got." I was like, "Okay." So I look at this text message. It's just our president saying how he feels unappreciated, and disrespected on our team, and that he hopes we lose the rest of our season so that we don't make it to playoffs, and he can just be on his merry way. And then it clicked for me. I was like, "Oh, there it is. I'm gonna go with that's why he's been acting like this." I'm gonna everything kind of clicking now and making sense. Um, so uh, at after that game, when I was showed that text message, our I showed our coach, and he was like, "Okay, we're having a team meeting tomorrow morning, so we can hash this out, because it's definitely affecting the team." So one of the things that was brought up in that meeting when we first got there was our vice president actually spoke up. He goes, "I feel like there's a divide. There's a team that follows me and the president, and then there's a team that follows you and the other officer. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I agree. Um, there's definitely guys, there's definitely a lot more guys that follow me and the other officer than the vice president and the president, just because of how we approach the players. Um, and I straight up fully asked our president, I was like, do you want to be here? Like, do you even want to be here? Because it's been seeming like you don't want to be here. You've been having really bad attitude at practice. You've been not showing much effort during games. And after our last loss, you came up to us smiling with this like big grin on your face after we just got wiped. So do you want to be here? Because if you don't want to be here, you can grab your stuff and you can leave, because we don't need that on the team. And he goes, of course I want to be here, blah, blah, blah. I was like, then why did you text this to one of our players? And he just went pale and didn't say anything. And the vice president, who he's really good buddies with, was just shocked that he even had said that. And so this was the biggest turning point in our season to get us turned around and come together as one. And after that, we put the pedal to the floor and gears started turning. And that rumor about the text had been spread around the team. And so he came out the next game and basically was like, I want to be here. I'm putting in all this effort this season to be here. And I want you guys to know I'm here for you. And I want to be here for you guys. So that was really huge of him to say that, because he's not one of those emotional guys. And so that's why I was kind of saying, like, throughout the season, the PLOs got better towards the end, as far as emotional intelligence, for sure. I saw a huge growth in emotional intelligence in him personally, which I was extremely happy about, because he's a hard ass, let's just put it that way. But yeah, and then, I mean, it can't change his ego. And that kind of brings us to the third freshman, or third dilemma with the freshman. We had a guy quit literally last week, because he wrote an email saying it was because of playing time and the fact that he doesn't feel valued on the team. And that just didn't sound right, because he's not that kind of guy who would typically complain about playing time. So I texted him on the side. I was like, hey, I heard you not going to be playing with us this season any longer. I wanted to reach out and see what was up. And so he sent me this paragraph about how basically playing time didn't feel valued on the team. And he got chirped out by our president at our last series, for literally no reason at all. And that's kind of happened, obviously, like I said, throughout the season before we got to that middle point. And so I was like, look, man, you've started either one or two games each series. Like this, it can't be because of playing time. It's got to be because of Rory, our president. And he was like, yeah, no, you're probably right. I didn't like the way he talked to me, and I didn't want to take it anymore, because it's happened to me and multiple guys throughout the season. So I just didn't want to do it for the rest of the season. It's not good for my mental health. And it doesn't make me feel like a valued member on this team. I was like, hey, man, I understand. I hope you come out next season. He goes, as long as you're leading, I definitely will. I was like, perfect. I'll be your president next year. So no worries. But yeah, just like that, kind of pretty much the big problem solving throughout the whole season was just putting out fires. And we had quite a bit of fires. Um, so that was definitely some difficult stuff we had to go through. But at the end of the day, we got to where we were. Um, and I think we rather accomplished our goal there. Um, Concept that I thought kept us moving towards that 100% team chemistry was the idea of slide edge, that I just learned about in 327. Um, I thought this idea was really cool. Basically, what I understood from it, having the slide edge is basically going that extra step that someone wouldn't typically go, or that you wouldn't typically go, but having that conscious effort to keep doing that every day, and what is giving you that slide edge. So a couple things, or a few things I'd put down, um, was encouraging guys to take the extra rep. Kind of the slide edge for me kind of brought in that third goal of instilling a sense of family. So encouraging guys to take that extra rep uh, in practice, basically, you know, uh, you got a bad hot, get back in there, get another ground ball. Bad throw, get in there, get another ground ball. Bobbled it, get in there, get another one. And we constantly picked each other up through practice and at games. Kind of if we made a good play in practice, like hyping each other up. When we practice in cabin, we practice with lacrosse too. I'd say we were louder than lacrosse most days at practice if we were doing infield indoors, just because we were loud, cheering, saying "out boy," and just loud stuff like that, and having a good time with each other. And then on the field, picking each other up. Like I was saying, after a bad strikeout or error, getting that guy, picking that guy's chin up, keeping him moving forward, giving him that positive body language, so that the whole team can continue to have positive body language. Uh, Huge, huge, huge. And then team bonding. This was a really big thing for me. I sacrificed my house to be the baseball house, and had as many team bonding things I could here. And we had one uh, a couple weeks ago, and whole team came over because I promised the guys, if we had went 6-0 in the fall, that I would get a stick and poke tattoo of their choosing on my ankle. So we had that event going on a couple weeks ago here, and everyone just had a good time, and everyone always has a good time together. And then when we went to Vegas for our tournament, the dudes really just bonded there, and that was great to see. So doing these three things gave us that slide edge to reach our goal at the end of the day. This picture here, this is us in Montana State, after we just clinched playoffs, which we will be going to May 12th through the 14th at NNU in Nampa. And that 4 we're throwing up, started by a couple of our catchers. It's representation of the fofofo from Wendy's. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's kind of our victory symbol, our victory picture we posted after we beat some guys. And there's quite a few of those. As we can see here, there's quite a bit. Bad day to be a Bengal. So when we beat ISU, or swept ISU, actually. Far left ones when we swept Reno. But yeah, the fofofo was definitely a staple for Boise State baseball this season. So obviously the big question of the semester, did we accomplish our task? I think we did. I think the team is extremely tight. There is still some like groups within the team, but when we all get together, like that all just goes out the window and we're all just having a good time together. So like put the task and how back up here on this slide, um, just as a recap. So achieving 100% team chemistry. How were we going to do that? We were going to do that by setting a goal for the team to strive for, and that was making the playoffs. We did. Like I said, haven't done that since 2016. It's a huge accomplishment for us. Instilling a sense of family. I really tried to do this, especially with the freshmen, because we had a lot of them. So always inviting them over to my house and having them hang out with us to kind of break out of their shell and get tight with us was huge. And I think there is a good sense of family amongst the team. I was talking, none of the team except the officers knew. The officers probably forgot, but honestly, except a couple of them. But I was talking to them. I was like, hey, or they were like, what project are you doing? I was like, I did a project on our team for my leadership class this entire semester. And they're like, oh, wow. That was probably a great project to do. I was like, yeah, it's great. What do you guys think of, like, do you guys feel like we had 100% team chemistry or a sense of family? And they go, yeah, absolutely. This is probably the tightest group of guys I've ever played with. And I definitely think we got to 100% team chemistry for sure. So that was actually really awesome to hear. And I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish this season. But season's not over yet. We're going to postseason, so that's really good for us. But yeah, I think I hit my 100% team chemistry goal. And obviously there's no really definite way to measure that. But I think feedback from the guys is definitely a good way to measure that. But yeah, this next slide, you wanted pictures. So there's a bunch of pictures from our season. Again, another faux right there. I tried to include everyone on the team. This picture down here, I don't know if that's allowed, but I threw it in because it was our playoff stogie. So I had to throw it in there, honestly. This was after we went 6-0. And that was the fate of my ankle right there. The first hot practice we had last week. So we went shirtless that day in a public park. So that was fun. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this, and I'm going to stop talking now. It was a pleasure to have you twice in my leadership program, and hopefully I'll see you in the future. Thank you.